Hey everyone, it's David Liu, your host and producer of the Tales to Tell podcast. Before we get into the finale of the season, I just want to say a few words. First, while this is the finale of the inaugural season, we do plan to record a bonus episode that we're calling the epilogue episode. In the epilogue episode, we will be doing a quick recap of each episode this season and share some behind the scenes and other cool stuff that we think you might be interested in. We also do a little Q&A where we'll answer some of your most asked questions throughout the season. So yes, if you have anything you want to ask me additionally, please send them over on social media and we will do our best to answer all of them. And finally, in that episode, this is probably the big thing that people are interested about. We will talk about the future of the Tales to Tell podcast. We are not ready to announce a release date for the bonus epilogue episode at the time of this recording, so please stay tuned on our socials, which I'll remind you at talestotell.podcast on Instagram, and we will announce a date as soon as we can. Hint, 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 we will have a special returning guest, so stay tuned for that. Lastly, I just want to take this moment to thank each and every one of you for your amazing support of this podcast throughout the season. Whether this is your first or this is your 8th episode that you're tuning into, thank you so much for spending your precious time listening to this show. The messages and love I've received in the past 2-3 months have been just incredible, really. Thank you for allowing this random Asian guy to realize his passion projects and to help spread love. I'm not worthy. So thank you so much. Okay, enough of me. Please enjoy the inaugural season finale of the Tales to Tell podcast.
My name is Romel Sylne, and this is my story.
Hello, storytellers. Welcome to the inaugural season finale of Tales to Tell. Tales to Tell is a storytelling podcast focused on the stories that matters the most, your stories. Every episode, guests from all walks of life join us to share the journeys that define them, the people who impacted them, and anything else that is important to them. Some of the stories may put a smile on your face, while others could make you shed a tear or two. But above all, we hope that listening to these stories can positively impact you in any shape or form, even just a little. For this season finale, I have the honor of welcoming... Why are you shaking your head?
Oh, come on, man.
I have the honor of welcoming Romel.
What's up? Hey.
Yay. So why? What's the shaking head?
No, because you said the honor. Come on.
It is.
I'm your average Joe.
Oh. So I was holding this on because we were trying to talk before this started. Mm-hmm. I was like, I want to tell you something, but I can't. I want to this to be on record.
Yeah.
So you asked what made me want to start a podcast.
Yeah.
One of the reasons is you. I'll tell you what. You're one of the first people in my friend circle or people that I follow that because I met you in college and you were one of the first that start to do their own stuff, if that makes sense, right? Like while we were still in school, you started your poetry stuff, you released a couple of books. I was like, I need to talk to this guy. I need an excuse to sit him down and have a chat with him and listen to your story because I think you have something cool to say, right? I follow you, so I see all the stuff you share, even though I'm not a poetry enthusiast, so to speak. I respect your work a lot because I've seen how much you've grown and all the success you had. So you're one of the reasons I want to do this. Like that's why I'm like, when I start this, Romel needs to be there in the first season, and he needs to be my season finale because he's one of the main reasons I want to do this. So there you go,
bro. I don't think that's fair because in the intro you said that you might say some things or some things might be said to make people cry. You're gonna make me cry. No, I appreciate that. That was actually, I didn't know that. That, to be in all fairness, I did not expect you were gonna say that.
I was the quiet admirer. Well, I sent you a couple of messages like, "Hey, congrats, blah blah." I bought your book at some point, stuff like that. But we never actively talked since our class together, basically.
To be fair, I think that when we met in college, what's funny is that I was actually one of the people that, well, because I had 2 stints in college. That first stint, when I met you initially, I wasn't really taking college that seriously. I regret that I didn't.
Really?
Yeah, I really didn't. I hated school. I had a lot going on too. At that time, on the outsider school that was making it so that school really wasn't my priority. Yeah, so I met you in that first stint of at college, and to be fair, I think that of the few people that I really interacted with, or that I still speak to today, you're actually one of them. And it's actually pretty cool because correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't it in Muslim studies?
No.
What class was it in?
I think the name of the class was Knowing Through Fiction. It was the one where we watched movies and wrote a lot of essays about
yes,
them.
that's I remember. Yeah, so it's just funny that after all this time that you would say something like that, because sometimes what's funny with when we do things or when we share our gifts with people, whatever you want to call it, you never really know who it is that you're going to impact. Even with this, you might start this and there might be days where you want to give up. There might be days where along the line or down the road, you might say, well, what was I thinking when I started this? But then you're going to have that, like you said, silent admirer that's going to say, hey, David, like, I just want to let you know I started this because you did this. So just to hear that, really, bro, you just made my day. Like, in all honesty,
no, bro.
I appreciate that.
It's funny to say that because, I was going to say, like, I met you, like, we did our thing, and then after we're not together, because it was one time, we were not in the same program, it was just one class, was it English?
I believe so.
Okay, it was English class that we had together, and then we branched out because I was in computer science. I'm not sure what you were doing back then. Communications. So we really only been together for one semester, and then I think after that semester, I saw you start posting stuff, a bunch of stuff, because we add each other because
on Facebook,
on Facebook and on Instagram because of a project. Do you remember what we did for the project?
I don't remember actually.
Okay, well, it was the final project of the semester. We were supposed to watch, I think it was Scarface.
Okay, it's bringing a bell. Yeah, Go ahead.
I forget if we chose it or there was a list of movies we had to choose. But we were sitting right next to each other. We never talked for the entire semester. But we were like, okay, well, we needed to work in groups for this one. Well, groups of 2.
That I remember.
And then you were just my email. I was like, yo, want to do this? I was like, sure. And then the movie that we had to watch was Scarface. And then we had to analyze it. I forgot what was the subject, but we had to analyze it for X reasons.
And I think I was really happy because I had already seen Scarface.
Oh. Well.
And I told myself it's going to be an easy grade. But
okay.
I remember that vaguely, though.
Yeah. And then we had to present something together, but we did our separate research, so to speak. You did a part about the movie, and I did another part of the movie. To be honest, I forget which part exactly. We both got 100%. In that, I remember, I will never forget that because we barely talked, but we came in there and we crushed it. We crushed that presentation. I was like, I respect that guy. There you go. Even though
we made it work.
Yeah, I think the only time I would text, I was like, "So are you ready?" Yeah, sure. Like one day before.
Yeah, bro. I'm telling you, it's like when you. Because I'm actually not. What's crazy is I was actually talking to a friend of mine yesterday about this. I'm actually somebody that when people don't know me and they see me, I don't talk a lot. But when you really get to know me, like, I crack jokes constantly. I take nothing serious. It's just that in that moment I didn't know you, right? So
it's fair.
Yeah. So we I guess through that we kind of got to know each other. And what's funny is that I got to know you a little bit better on the outside of college as I watched you, because you say that you watched me, but I watched you as well. And I was like, I remember I would see you post your stuff, and I'm like, damn, how did he get there? I'm like, oh man, like I was so jealous. Like I'd see you post things from Otaku Dan and all these. I was like, oh, he's getting on my nerves. Like I didn't get.
Well, that's
there.
volunteering. That's not.
But still, an opportunity is an opportunity. So I was always curious as to how you managed to get to that point. And not only that, but like, I know you were very vocal about wanting to get into that industry. Yeah. So to see you actually get your foot in the door was really impressive. I'm not going to lie to you. Thank you.
Well, more on that maybe one day. We'll do an episode by myself. But today it's about you, Romel. In case you haven't guessed, Romel, he's a writer, a poet. Anything else? Any father?
A father. A husband.
Manga
enthusiast. I guess. And Not as much as David, but I love video games too. So,
It's not competition. If you like video games, I respect you a lot.
bro, if you check the trophies on your PlayStation, yo, stop it. Like,
No, I know I'm crazy. So
I seen. Was it yesterday? You had 100% trophies on what game was it?
Metaphor.
Yeah, and I was like,
I just did Metaphor. Yeah.
But how many hours did you put into that game?
That one's not that long. It was like less than 100 hours. Yeah.
And you got 100%.
Yeah. Well, the most impressive, this one I'll flex is FF10 Rebirth. That one it's considered really hard. It's like almost 200 hours, that one. So that one I'm proud of. But Metaphor was really easy. Anyways, again, enough about me. So Romel, I'll let you talk about your story.
Where do you want me to start?
Childhood, I guess.
All right, from the beginning. In a galaxy far. No, I'm joking. Okay. So my story, I was born and raised in Florida from 2 Haitian parents, of course. I have an older sister. I actually moved here when I was 11, because at the age of 11, year 2004, actually, I lost both my parents in the same year. My dad first. Ironically, I lost my dad first, and then my mom 4 months later. 3 months later, actually.
Before you came?
Before I came here.
Montreal?
Because the reason why I say ironically is because my mom actually was the one that fell ill first. And my dad was the one that was taking care of me and my sister. He would like do 3 jobs. He barely, like, he saw us. He always made time to see us, always made time to go back to the hospital, see my mom, and et cetera, et cetera. So you imagine hospital technology wasn't what it was back then as it is today. So my mom was going through some things. Operation went bad. So it kind of put her in a state where she wasn't 100% in control of her faculties. So he was taking care of us. And ironically, I don't know if it was the fatigue that got him or what it was, but he ended up passing first. So he left us with my mom while she was in this state. Then after he passed in January of 2004. After he passed, it was tough because my dad was a superhero, bro. He was a superhero. He was immortal to me. You know how when you let's say when, like, fans of music will look at Michael Jackson and then when he died they thought it was impossible. It was like that. My dad was a superhero. That's the best thing. That's the best way I can put it. And seeing him pass broke something in me and my sister. Because at that point, me and my sister, we kind of drifted apart while we were still in the context of, because I was still living in Florida at the time. So we kind of drifted apart, and our caretakers, who eventually became my aunt, she, in the meantime, while we finished school that year, she actually had me go live with a friend of mine and my sister live with another friend of ours. So we were in separate households, ironically, which were across the street from one another. But yeah, me and my sister drifted apart. And then my mom, and I remember April 7th, 2004, my mom, she called us just to check in because her health was deteriorating. So her family, which is my mom's family, is based here. So they decided as a unit that they would bring her here while we finished off the school year, and then we would move up here, unbeknownst to us at the time. So I remember April 7th, she called us from here. We spoke to her. She sounded like she was actually getting better and that things were going to get back to our normal, per se, without my dad. But that was April 7th. Her birthday was April 11th. And then, what was it? 3 days later? No, it was 6 days later. She passed away. I remember my sister coming to get me one Saturday morning. I think I was watching Yu-Gi-Oh! And it was crazy because, I was watching Yu-Gi-Oh! When my dad passed. When my mom passed, I forgot what show I was watching. I was watching Shaman King. There we go. I was watching Shaman King at the time. And when my sister came to get me, I kind of felt it because my sister came in with a sad vibe, and I was questioning why that was. And before she even told me why, she was like, "I have something to tell you." And I was like, "What? Did mom go?" And then she was like, "Yeah." And that's where I was just like, damn, Okay, so I knew that life itself was gonna change, and so we moved here. We moved here that summer. Left everything I knew. I was born and raised in Florida, so moving here kind of changed everything. I had to learn French. That took 2 years. It was difficult because learning French for 2 years put me back. Because when I finally, let's say, when I finally got put into a regular school system after learning French, like my friends back home, they were 2 years in advance. They were graduating and stuff, but I was stuck, doing everything else. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Well, I mean, unless you have other questions.
Starting off heavy.
I'm sorry.
Well, first, why did you and your sister drift apart when Dad passed away?
I guess we were just frustrated. We're frustrated about how life was going. And I can only speak for myself. I was frustrated because the way life was going, I had certain expectations that I had for my sister, and I felt like I was just looking for someone to be angry at. So that's what ended up happening. I just was angry at her, and
And you were around 10 years old right then.
I was like 11.
Damn, you already understood that.
Yeah, I mean,
like people say, when parents pass away, you grow up faster.
yeah, you have to, bro. You have to.
Yeah, sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's okay. But yeah, you have to, and that's exactly what happened. I felt like that summer was a school of hard knocks. I just really had to grow up a lot faster than I would have hoped to.
Mm-hmm. Did it get better when Mom passed away? Like, did you?
Not really.
Not really.
Not really, because the transition from remember, coming from the U.S., coming from Florida, moving to Montreal, it's two different mindsets. I had to learn about myself a lot. I resented. I had a lot of resentment. Just for the fact that I was taken out of my environment into something new. And I know that for a while, I didn't speak to anybody. I kept a lot of stuff in. I remember my aunt actually trying to put me into art therapy because she knew I liked to draw. So she put me into art therapy thinking that was actually going to help. It didn't. In reality, it really didn't. It just showed me how much resentment I really had. Because I can show you, like, one of the drawings I remember that I drew was a picture of Luffy from One Piece, but with like a with a 100-ton ball on his back, and I thought it was cool. But when I really look back at it, I just realized that I felt like I had the pressure of the world on my hands, and I had no idea what to do with that pressure. So I kind of kept to myself, but me and my sister's relationship did get better. Okay. That's one of the positive things. Me and my sister's relationship did get better. We got a lot closer. Today she's like one of my best friends after my wife, of course. But yeah, and my cousins as well. My cousins, they became my little brothers and everything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned anime a lot. Is that before and still your escapism for all this shit in life?
Ooh, that's a good question.
And ironically, like, every time something bad happens, you were in the middle of watching anime. So
that is whoa.
Right? Like, so I feel kind of weird. Like, so that's why I'm surprised you're still into that. Cause surprised. That's why I'm curious. Cause every time you're watching anime, something bad happened. So even though you're watching anime again nowadays, you don't think back of all those traumatic periods when your parents passed away, basically.
That is, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I did not even think about that. I never even looked at I never thought of that correlation, but that is true. Wow. Do I use anime as an escape? I probably do. I think I do subconsciously, because even now, like, especially to like not think, to disconnect, I guess, from the responsibilities that I have as a man, as a husband, etc. I do tend to escape and watch anime or play video games. Mm-hmm. And right now I'm stuck on, I love Blue Lock, but anyway, that's a whole nother
let's go.
Yeah, that's a whole nother side note. But yeah, I there is a correlation with that, and I find that ironic. You would think that I would hate anime, because
maybe
of
not
that.
hate, but like maybe you're afraid to watch it because it's connected to two very sad incidents in your life.
But I never thought about that. That's actually a good.
Okay.
That's a good catch. But that is. Yeah, I'm actually like I'm thinking about it, and I feel like you just like opened up Pandora's box. Like,
Okay.
wow,
I was
never
really
really
because you
thought
keep
about
talking
that.
about like you keep bringing up anime. I was like, oh, when I was doing this, I was watching this. No. So okay.
Wow. Okay. I'll look at you. I'm gonna leave here with something today.
Okay, cool. So you, unfortunately, you came to, well, fortunately for me, I met you. You came to Montreal, and you went through all that. But how was high school years?
High school years.
Because when you came here, I'm guessing you couldn't go to high school because of the French.
Yeah. So I had to learn French for 2 years. So they put me in what they call a accueil, which is kind of like a welcome class. Back in the States, they would call it ESOL. So essentially, it's kind of like an introduction to that language, the predominant language in of course, in this province, it's French. So I had to learn French for 2 years. So once that was done and I got the green light to basically go into a normal school system, they put me in 8th grade, secondary 2.
Okay.
Yeah, but mind you, my friends were all technically in sec 4. Yeah, so that was annoying. I was older than a lot of the kids. Well, not that much older, but a little, like a year and a half older than a lot of the kids who became my peers. So that it was kind of tough because you're trying to make friends. You don't want to be a loner, but then at the same time, you have to kind of adapt to a new lingo. Trying to make friends in a new language is tough because not everybody was fluent in English. So that was kind of tough until I remember I did secondary, then high school, and it was to a point where I personally felt like I wasn't. There's a backstory to it as well. I could tell you off the mic, but I kind of felt like I wasn't moving forward. So me and my aunt, I spoke to my aunt about it. We made an executive decision that I was old enough to go to adult school, which is cool that we have that option here in Quebec. So I was fortunate enough to do that, and my grades went from plummeting because of the language and I went to adult school in English. So skyrocketed. I was doing the things that I was used to doing back in Florida. Not humble brag, but I was a great student in Florida. So yeah, so once that was done, I passed with flying colors, and then off to college I was.
Did you feel like you were not moving forward, like mainly because of the language, or also because of the people around you? You're like, I'm not progressing in both life and education.
It was mainly the language.
Okay.
It was mainly the language. I would probably say the people aspect of what you just said probably came in when I got to high school, like secondary 3-ish, and then eventually college. Relationships, all that stuff. You kind of prioritize certain things more than school, and that's kind of what brought me, as I mentioned before, to that first stint in college where it really didn't go so well. So I went through college, horrible experience. Didn't really take my classes seriously to an extent where, just to give you an idea, I took, in the English curriculum, you kind of have different branches in the English curriculum, right? Where you can take like poetry classes, all this stuff, but it's all under the umbrella of English. Yeah. I failed the poetry class.
And you failed poetry
exactly.
class?
I failed the poetry class. And the reason why I failed poetry is because I took it for granted. Because you get to a certain point where, let's say, for example, I live a good 45 minutes away from the school, and I had to take a public transportation. So if, let's say, class started at 9 and I woke up at...
I hated those classes.
Yeah. So class starts at 9. I wake up at 8:30. I look at it, I'm like, man, I'm not going to school today. So I would never show up for class. Okay. And I remember I failed the class with a 56. Oof. So I reached out to the teacher, and I was like, hey, I noticed that I'm failing with a 56. Like, is there anything that I can do to push my grade up? And I kid you not, this is one of the most humbling experiences ever. She wrote back to me, and she said, are you kidding me? I was like, what do you mean? She basically said, well, you never show up for class. When you do show up, you're always in the back. You always have your laptop open. You never interact. You never do this. You never do that. And mind you, during the semester, there was like a poetry week, and they did like a little presentation, and she asked me to be a part of it, and I shared some poetry in front of a few teachers, which was really cool. And I still failed. I still failed the class. She didn't give me the points, and I kind of turned back with my tail in between my legs, and I was just super disappointed because I failed poetry, but not because I wasn't good, but because I took it for granted. So there was a lesson in there somewhere.
Okay.
Wake up for class. That's pretty much it. But that first stint really wasn't great. Then I kind of said, you know what, I want to do something different. Started working full time for a good year and a half. And then I realized that.
Oh, so you took a break from school?
Yeah, I took a break from school.
Was this after or before I met you?
After you met.
After I met you?
Yeah,
So we did the class together, and then you went to work.
Well, we did class together, and I think if it wasn't that same semester, it was the semester after.
Okay.
That I ended up just taking a break from school for like a year and a half, worked full time, and then by that time I think I was like 21. By that 21 or 22, by that time, I signed up to go to the University of Ottawa. So I moved for roughly 9 months. I moved in April and came back in January. I was super homesick.
Why Ottawa?
I wanted to start fresh.
Okay.
I was going through at the time I was going through a bad breakup, and that's one of those things that kind of hindered my first stint in college. I was going through a bad breakup, and I wanted something fresh. I wanted to start new. So I kind of distanced myself from Montreal, from my friends, and etc., just to become my own person. And it worked great for a few months. And then a lot of the things that I was running from came back into my life. I eventually moved back here. After 9 months. I regret it, actually, till this day. I mean, one of the things that's great about it is that I was able to go back and finish college. I didn't finish at the university, but I came back, finished college over here. I eventually met my wife, etc. But that's always great. But I regret coming back here, because I felt like when I was there, it was like I was in the desert. And I feel like for my faith, what I mean is, I felt like I needed that moment. Kind of like I'm there just striving to survive. I just felt like it was me and God, and that was it. But so ultimately I did come back. I worked again. Then finally I decided to finish college. It's stupid because when I finished my first stint, you know how many classes I had left? I had 4 classes left. No, 3 classes left.
What, in CJ or?
So mind you, I could have just finished those 3 classes and just been done with it. Yeah. But I took that break. And then when I finally realized, when someone asked me, he was like, but how many classes do you have left? I was like, I don't know, like 7, 8. They're like, you sure? And I was like, yo, let me check. So I checked, and I only had 3.
That was like a few years later.
Yeah. So, but I think that everything happens for a reason, because I felt like during that first stint, I was too young to understand certain things, or I was too blinded to understand certain things. And then now, a few years later, when I go back, I was passing my classes, and I came in with a different type of maturity, because I came from university. I know what it was like to live by myself, pay my own bills, etc. So I was able to really pass my classes, get my diploma, and yeah, that was my academic journey.
Okay. Now I'm curious, where does the whole become a poet come from? Like I feel like I missed something here.
Oh man, that actually, because I've always loved drawing. I've always loved the arts. Like, I even remember when my mom gave me a set of markers, because I used to love Wolverine when I was a kid. My mom gave me a set of markers, and I used to like put them in between my fingers and I used to draw like that. But what was crazy about poetry is that I started writing poetry because of a show. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Hey Arnold.
Yes.
Yeah. So remember Helga was in love with Arnold. She was the bully, and she always used to. She had a shrine of Arnold in her closet.
Just tell me something.
Yeah, so made out of gum, chewed gum, etc. So she used to write poetry about him, and I always felt that I was enamored with the way that she spoke about him. So I started writing poetry, and what's funny is that you asked me that question. Is that I remember writing a poem for this girl that I liked. I forgot her name. Actually, I do remember her name, but I can't say it on here. But
the wife will be happy. It's
So I wrote a poem about her, and I don't know what gave me the gall to actually give her the poem. I actually knew someone that knew her, so I gave them the poem. They gave her the poem, and I remember going into my first class of the day, and I was really happy. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like she's gonna be super excited." And then when it's time for lunchtime, people are looking at me and they're laughing, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And where I was sitting, I could see the lunch line, and in the lunch line were the popular kids, and the popular kids were basically rereading my poem out loud. And that moment broke me because they were making jokes. And back then, you couldn't really be a boy and being close to your feelings, etc. So it was kind of frowned upon, especially in my community, especially as a youth. So that kind of made me never want to write again. But eventually, as time progressed, and after everything I went through after my parents, I kind of started.
I'm sorry, that was in high school or
that was actually
in elementary school.
It was actually in middle school in Florida. So this was in 6th grade when this happened.
Okay.
And so if we fast forward to now, well, not now, I would say 2011, I actually met, which is one of my best friends now, this guy named Ross. He actually raps. And I tried the rapping thing for a while. I suck at it. So I realized that wasn't my niche, but I eventually just started writing again. And we were recording some of my poems, and I put out a few mixtapes. Please do not go look for them. But so I did that for a while. And yeah, but ironically, at one of the, I actually was approached to do an open mic event. And I remember going, and I sucked. I was horrible. But at this event, there was this tall, lanky guy in the back that was paying close attention to what I was doing. And I remember he approached me. Shout out to Sven's Telemac. But he approached me and he said, "I like what you do. I have an opportunity for you. What's your phone number? I'm going to contact you soon." So I was like, okay, cool. So that motivated me to get better. But during that time, I waited. And then he finally reached out probably like a month later. And he let me know that he was starting a faith-based poetry collective. And this was around 2012. Yeah, so from there, I was immersed in poetry. I was around poets. I was around people of my community, etc. And what was cool was I realized that I was kind of diving into something that allowed me to express myself. Because remember, I told you after my parents passed, I wasn't really talking. So I was actually communicating through poetry. And I will never forget this moment. I went to, because there's a few poets that I actually follow that are really, really, till this day, they're in my top 5 of poets, excuse me. And I went to an event. It was a faith-based event that they would do every year. And so we drove to Toronto, because it was normally in Toronto that they did this whenever they were in Canada. And I met them. And during one of the VIP sessions, we were allowed to ask them questions. And one of the questions that they were asked was, what do you do to like stay, like, I guess, focused within poetry? And one of the poets in question, his name is Preston Perry. He said he studies poetry. He immerses himself in it. And that moment, I'll probably never speak. I met him twice actually, but he'll probably never know. But that moment changed my life, because once he said that, I'm an avid reader. Like, I read books more than I breathe. You follow me on social media, so you know. So at that moment, the moment he said that, all of the money that I had in my bank account, I went on Amazon and I just bought poetry books. I just bought poetry books. When I tell you, I ruined myself. Like, I have a library at my house. So I bought poetry books just to see different styles, different approaches, different perspectives. That became my life. I realized that this is something I want to do. It's something I'm really passionate about. So I studied the art form, not just reading it, but studying it. Okay, what's a soliloquy? What's this? What's this form? What's this? I immerse myself in it, like kind of like an obsession. I don't know if you're familiar with Kobe Bryant and how he talks about basketball and how he studies it in the X's and O's. Yeah. That's me. I really, like, I don't approach poetry like a normal person would. Like, I'm a madman about it. Like, it to a point where it gets on my nerves when I see talented poets not taking the art form seriously. That's how, to an extent, that I care about it. So, yeah, I dived into poetry, and it's been a love story ever since.
It's funny you said it because, like I said, I've been a quiet stalker, and now that you explained that there was a period where you exploded, I remember that, like, suddenly you just went ham, like, every day at least, like, 3-4 posts, and then it just went on. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, I remember. Oh man, social media, bro. But
yeah, well, that's how you spread the word. Yeah. It's good, and that's how I know about all this. You mentioned to not Google your mixtape. Is this it?
Yo, he actually said that is funny. How did you get that? Oh my God.
So to the listeners, I have his mixtape here where
man.
I think, again, like I said, I think it was the semester right after we were together, and you started doing this. You're like, hey, I'm doing this, guys, and blah blah. And I was like, yo, Romel, like I texted her, yo, Romel, I want a copy. Here's my, like, we couldn't meet, so I was like, here's my lock.
Yeah, I remember that.
I gave you my lock password, and you went in and gave me a copy. So there you go.
Can I see that for 2 seconds? What's amazing is that it's actually still intact. So you actually took care of this, and I appreciate that.
I'm a collector. Like, I have so much respect for people that start passion projects, right? So that's why, like, I'm pretty transparent. I'm not a poetry guy, but seeing your passion through it, I'm like, I had to ask you for a copy, and, like, you know,
I have to take a picture of that when we're done.
You don't have a copy yourself?
No, I do, but it's just that's sentimental because there was a lot going on in that time because I remember that was 2012, and just the fact that I still have that, that actually means a lot to me, bro.
There you go. Really I was not lying. I'm following you. There you go. Number one fan. Okay, no. I'm not. I'm not gonna call myself number 5 because I'm not a poetry guy. But
wow, that's actually incredible, bro.
There you go.
Man,
I got you, right? You didn't see this coming.
To be honest with you, bro, this is your thing. This is your thing because I feel like a lot of people, when they start podcasts, they just do it to do it. Yeah. And I think that to be a great podcaster, you really have to do the research. You have to know who it is that you're talking to. Yeah. And the fact that, like, I'm talking to you, like, you're my friend. Like, I know we don't talk often, but I actually consider you as someone that I could really, like, hey, like, we're supposed to go out to eat one day. And I'm going to be like, I wouldn't mind doing that, you know? So, but back to what I was saying is, I feel like when you say that you want to be a podcaster, you have to study the person. You have to really be well versed in that person. And the fact that you brought that out, my day's been done, bro. my day has been made.
Like, I'll be honest, I knew I had a copy somewhere. I had to look for it, and guess what? It was just behind me in my library. I never put it in a box or whatever. It was still behind me. Yeah.
Wow, that is nuts.
That is we'll crazy. Take a picture there after.
We definitely will. That is crazy. My goodness.
All right. So obviously this is, well, I don't know if you want me to share today, but this is mixtape you don't want to share. But let's talk about your successful work. You published 5 books, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Let me try and name them. Where Footsteps Lead Me.
Okay.
When Black Boys Cry.
Okay.
She Is.
Okay.
For War Between Two Lands.
Okay.
5, you just released this summer, right? Heading Home Soon.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go. I practice.
Funny. Oh man, I'm actually if I could blush, I'd be blushing right now. Yeah, so I came out with those.
Okay, let's start with the first one to not to overwhelm. So where did the idea of the first book came out? Why did you want to write it, and what was the inspiration behind it?
It actually goes back to one of your questions. When you asked me why poetry. Mm-hmm. So my first book actually documents the moment from a specific moment where I believe it was after my mom passed, and I remember I was, because in our room, in the room that me and my sister shared back in Florida, we had a bunk bed, and on this bunk bed I was the top bunk. So I remember after my parents passed, I was on the top bunk and I was sleeping, but I woke up and I felt like life hit me at that moment. So I started crying, and I remember I was so angry. And at this time, I knew nothing about faith. I knew nothing about God. I knew nothing about what I believed in. But I just knew that my mom took us to church every Sunday. That's why if you read that first book, there's at least like 4 or 5 poems. Or even in She Is Eventually, where you see there's a series of poems called Sunday Mornings. Because I talk about my experience going to church and not necessarily knowing why I went to church, but because I was told to do so. But that moment on that bunk bed, I cried and I was really angry. And I said, God, if you really do exist, like, why am I going through? And I remember I was cursing, like I was cursing. I was pissed off. And what I realized was, and it's funny because in scripture, it does say that one of the things that God delights in, or one of the things that you should bring to him, is a contrite heart, basically a person that's heartbroken. So in that moment, I understood. Well, later on, I understood that verse more clearer. But at that moment, I was so angry at God, and I kid you not, David. From that moment, there's also a verse in scripture that says that God takes care of orphans and widows, and from that moment, I kid you not, the way that my life happened, it could only be that. It could only be God, because there was no way that the way that I went from rock bottom to now, you can't really explain that. I don't believe in destiny. I don't believe in that, because that stuff is not personal. I just feel like I felt like God heard me in that moment and orchestrated everything else. And I mean, I've had a lot of lows. I'm not going to lie to you. I had a lot of lows, and I talk about that in the book. Eventually going through that moment, losing my parents. I talk about the things, the relationship that basically kind of ruined my life, my early life, if I can say it like that. Basically filling that void that my parents left, and then eventually going back to realizing that this was all orchestrated for a reason. That's why when with the title "Where Footsteps Lead Me," is that the footsteps lead me back to Him, which is God. So it basically documents my journey from the moment my parents passed to up until roughly 2000, and I'd probably say 2015.
And was this something you had in your head that you really want to like somehow express it? Because you mentioned a couple times you were a quiet kid in general. Was that like, I found the medium to share it? No,
in all honesty, I didn't even want to write a book. It's funny because there was a guy, his name is Ruben. He's actually another poet as well. And I remember he kept bothering me. He was like, Romel, why don't you write a book? I had the lamest excuse. I actually told him that I didn't want to write it because I felt like this generation didn't read enough. It was just so stupid. But he kept bothering me with that. And one day I just sat there and I was just like, why don't I do it? And I started writing, but I was writing basically like an autobiography. But then I was like, but this is not me. Like, I don't write autobiographies.
Okay, so at first you didn't even know what kind of book you were going to write.
I didn't. I had no clue. And then as my love for poetry just kept going, like, mind you, I released my first book in 2019. He said this to me in 2018 actually. And so I worked on it. I remember the manuscript that I wrote was this thick, and I had a few friends read it. I don't really think they really paid much attention to it that much, if I'm honest with you, but I went through with it and released my first book. And we did a launch event. I remember we did a launch for the book, and it was beautiful. Minus the fact that my sister ran out crying when we started talking about my parents. Got a little bit emotional. I started crying, and then once I started crying, she actually ran out the room. Kind of like I don't know if you're familiar with Maury Povich, the Maury Show, when they say that you are not the father, and then the girl just runs out. Yeah, that's something that you check on your spare time. But yeah, so it was just beautiful. The moment was beautiful. And that was kind of like, I felt my first book was kind of a closing of a chapter, because a lot of people, I feel like, in terms of mental health, when we see a therapist, you open up about certain things, right? But I also feel like with my first book, it kind of closed a chapter on my grieving from my parents, etc. So that moment actually helped me get through that. That's why when you look at, I don't know if you want me to go into that in my second book.
Yep.
All right. When I get to my second book, I start talking about other things, but never forgetting what's behind me. So essentially, my second book, When Black Boys Cry, I actually wrote that around the time of George Floyd passed, and a lot of the other killings of people that looked like me. And I didn't do it for that. But what was strange about that is that I don't like writing just to write. I always want to write with intention. Or whenever I release a book, I try to do it intentionally. And I told myself that with the second book, I was like, no, I'm not going to release it. I'm not going to release it. It's not the time. It's not the time. But then I always felt in my...
Not the time because of all the Black Lives Matter happening?
Yeah, and I was like, it's not the time. It's not the time. And then eventually, I felt in my spirit to just a tugging, like, just do it. And then when I finally did it, I believe a week later, if I'm not mistaken, I don't fact check me on this, but not too long after, that's when George Floyd passed. And I was like, wow, that I felt like in terms of my art, and there's no correlation between the two, or it's not to make anything of what happened to George Floyd and his family, but I felt like it was necessary because When Black Boys Cry, I talk a lot about just the silence that Black boys have to go through, because we're told from ever since we're little that crying is a form of weakness. I went with it, and I'm glad I did. I'm really glad I did. It's actually one of my favorite projects. But from there,
I don't know if you remember, like, there was all that's going on, and then your book just kind of was like, what a perfect timing. Like, I know you didn't write it like as a reaction to that.
Yeah.
But it was just such a great time. Like, everything was happening. Like, everything exploded around that time. I was like, I have to get it. I have to buy a copy.
I appreciate that because it was scary, because it was something that I really didn't, because I was afraid of the reaction, because one of the things you never want to do, especially when you create art, is you never want to be that person that says, well, hey, you're just riding a wave. And that really wasn't that, because like I said, I wasn't looking forward to releasing the project. I wanted to wait. I wanted to push it. But I felt in my spirit that that's what I had to do in that moment.
And to your credit, from what I remember, you never advertised it as such. You never took advantage of what was happening in society. You just market it as your own. That new book.
I put it out, and I'm big on, and I'll probably say this now because you're probably gonna ask me, but I feel like with my work, there's two people actually, two celebrities that I actually look up to, that actually motivated me to start getting into poetry as well. Both of them are rappers. Ironically, one of them is, I don't know if you're familiar with Wale, the rapper.
I'm not a poetry guy. I'm not a rap guy.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. But Wale, who actually does poetry as well, and he raps, and Kendrick Lamar, of course. I'm a big Kendrick guy. So one of the things I've always loved about Kendrick as a person is that when he releases his projects, or when he drops his music, he does so and then he disappears. Like, you don't hear from him for like a year or two. And a lot of people would say, well, that's detrimental to his craft, but it isn't, because when you really think about it, if you're in a position to, whether it's music, poetry, or I don't know, paintings, etc., if it's detrimental if you release things like that constantly, because you never really give yourself a chance to live, to go through things, and
To reflect.
exactly, to reflect. So when I put out when Black Boys Cry, that was my headspace. That's where I was at. And then I think the year after that, I released She Is, which is my third book. And my third book was more an ode to all the women that impacted me in my life, whether it was positively or negatively. And with each chapter is dedicated to a specific type of woman. For example, I know there's a chapter dedicated to my wife. There's another dedicated to my sister, my grandma, etc. And it's a lot in there. And I actually love all of my works, but I feel like that one in particular was different for me because it wasn't necessarily about me. It was really about, it was a dedication piece to all these women, but also me owning my mistakes towards these women as well. So I felt like with She Is, around the time I released She Is, the day that I proposed to my fiance. So that was fun. That was interesting.
And you planned that?
I didn't.
Oh,
I
okay.
actually
okay.
didn't. But it was cool because I knew that when well, actually, did I? I think I did because the day that I proposed to my fiance, it's a cool story, and then I'll continue. But so I rented out the movie theater. Oh yeah, when I proposed to my fiance, I rented out the movie theater, and there was an artist that she really liked. I reached out using the app Cameo to reach out to them. You can do that. You can actually, some celebrities for a certain fee, you can ask them to do certain things and they'll do it. Nothing crazy, but so essentially I reached out to the artist, had him basically sing a few lines from the song that she liked, and then I had him say at the end of the video, hey, Romel wants to ask you something. So while the movie theater is blacked out, the light opens, I bring her down where the screen is, and there's rose petals waiting for her. And our family was actually behind us, but she never saw them. So I proposed, and she said yes, of course. But after that, that same day, we went to the museum, and then we went to the botanical gardens. And that's where I kind of was just like, you know what? Let's kill two birds with one stone. And I just released the book.
Okay.
That day. Yeah, that same day, and just did like a little impromptu photo shoot. Yeah, the Botanical Gardens. And yeah, I actually really liked the rollout of that one. That was actually fun. And then the fourth one, A War Between
And put
Two
me in a
Nights.
timeline.
Yes.
Was that during COVID?
It was. So that's what made it tough. So renting out a movie theater in COVID times was difficult, especially for a proposal, because mind you, the movie theaters are basically closed, but everything was slowly opening back up. And I had to reach out to them, and ironically I reached out to them and they answered me like a month and a half, 2 months later. Oof. So I had to push my proposal a few weeks because of it. So when they finally answered me, timing was great. Everything worked out. The people were super nice, super generous, and it just worked. So COVID was bad. COVID was horrible for everybody. But I feel like that was kind of the only bright spot in COVID, which was cool. But so eventually, again, society happens. A lot of stuff is happening in Haiti, all these different things. So I kind of was always wondering, because if you pay attention to my work, I talk about my parents a lot. Well, a lot more in my earlier works, but I never spoke about my dad, which is ironic. I speak about him briefly, but it's done purposely so that I kind of show how my relationship was with him. I barely knew my father because ironically, when I was born, I was sent here at 4 months. I lived here from 4 months to 4 years old, and then they shipped me back.
Huh.
So I only knew my parents from the age of 4 to 11. So I knew basically for 8 years, I knew my parents, and then they passed.
Was your mom here with you?
I was actually raised by my grandmother and my aunt.
Why did they send you here?
I'm assuming just life. It was difficult because I believe my mom was in school. She was working. My dad was working, etc. So it was tough to take care of me and my sister. So I got sent here where my mom's family is. So all that to say that I didn't really have a close relationship with my father. My father was a great dad. He was a great provider, but he wasn't, as a lot of Haitian men are, he wasn't very close to his feelings. So I couldn't really, in that 8 years that I knew him, really have deep conversations with my dad, you know? So
You were a kid.
yeah, I was a kid as well. So what was funny was that with this book, as I was writing this book, I actually told myself, you know what? I want to know about my dad. I asked my aunts and uncles everything they remembered about him. And I asked my sister, because my sister's like an encyclopedia. She has all these family memories that I don't even remember. But
How older is she?
it's a 2-year gap.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went through that whole process, and then I also took the time to really dive into my culture that I barely knew. Of course, I'm Haitian. I'm proud to say it, but there's a lot of us that are just Haitian by association, if I can say it like that. And what I mean by that is I barely knew my culture. I barely knew the history of Haiti. I barely knew, and I don't just mean the negative, the positive stuff too, you know? So
That's surprising for me to hear because, like, again, from looking at social media, you seem like I'm proud. I even thought you were born here at some point.
no,
Like,
I'm not.
like the way that you show your love for Haiti. Like, I thought you were from there. Like, born there. Sorry.
No, but I do. I love Haiti massively. I've been there, and every time I've been there, my dad, and that's the thing. My dad, when he was alive, he always used to take us on summer trips over there, and immersed us in the culture. It was great, but it was to a certain extent because I was young. So there's a lot of things that I didn't understand. So as I was preparing for this book, I kind of dived into the culture, dived into the history.
We're talking about the fourth book now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dived into the history. I got to actually know my father through all this research and why he was the way that he was. And what was beautiful about it is that so the book essentially talks about the correlation between me being an American born Haitian and how in the US, if I'm talking to fellow Americans, they'll see me as just Haitian, that I'm an immigrant. But then if I go to Haiti, they'll see me as just an American. They won't really see me as Haitian. So I wanted to, that's where the war comes from. But it's also a double entendre where the war between two lands is, I'm also battling the fact that I don't know much about Haiti, but I don't also know a lot about my father. So Haiti kind of represents my dad in the sense. So throughout me learning about Haiti, I got closer to my father, which was great. So to be honest, it's actually my favorite book that I wrote because I feel like I really talk about just Haiti, the culture, the history. Also, there's a chapter where I really dive into the relationship that I had with my father, whereas I barely knew him, but I got to know him throughout the process. And then lastly, my most recent book is actually Heading Home Soon. And that one, ironically, was actually written because one of my friends passed away from cancer. He was young. He was at the time of his passing, I believe he would have been 25 if I'm not mistaken.
Jesus.
And it's funny because I remember me and him having a falling out, and it was actually my fault, but we didn't speak for like a year and some change. And I remember feeling in my spirit that God was telling me to reach out to him, and I never knew why. So I reached out. I remember reaching out to him, and I was like, hey, I hope everything's good. I know that we haven't spoken in a really long time, but I was just wondering if it would be okay for us to chit chat. And he found it weird too. He was like, yeah, sure, you can come through. And this is at the time I was preparing my wedding. So I went to meet him, and I apologized to him. I apologized to him because I realized that it was my mistake. It was my fault that we weren't speaking. It was over something as stupid as basketball. And I apologized to him. He accepted my apology, and we talked for hours. Like there was never that friction between us. And what was crazy is that he was in perfect health at that time. And so we spoke, laughed, had a great time. And as I was preparing my wedding, I remember that first year, like once I got married, I moved into my house, I started seeing him less. And then there was a day where I saw that he looked completely different. Because this is somebody that had a huge afro, long hair. He was really, girls loved him. He was handsome. He was athletic. He played multiple sports. He was really that guy. Like you see, like in those movies where the popular kid, the jock, that was him. And when I saw him, he didn't look the same. I think he was going through chemo. He lost his hair. He shaved his head. He didn't look anything like he used to. And I reached out to my cousin, and I remember asking like, what was up with him? And he was like, well, he has cancer. And I was like, what? How is that possible? Like, this is somebody that trains regularly, eats proper. He's active. I've seen people in worse situations, you know? So I didn't understand. And I reached out to him, and I was like, bro, you're going to get through this. Like, I'm praying for you. We're going to get through this. You're going to get through this. Like, I'm here if you need anything. And he was like, yeah, I got you. Don't worry about it. And slowly his health deteriorated. And at the same time, my wife's pregnant. So I find out in February of that same year that we were expecting. And it was difficult. And that's what I talk about in the book. It's difficult being happy where my friend is going through this. And it's difficult being sad because we're expecting. So heading home soon was kind of another double entendre where heading home soon could represent heading home soon from the hospital, heading home soon from both hospitals in the sense of as a patient and as someone that leaving the hospital with my son.
Love it.
So heading home soon talks about him, my friend, and also about my son. And just a small little story about my son is that because as you know, my parents passed, and my dad, ironically, after my dad, I'm the last son. So I'm the last person to carry my last name, and as a male anyway. So what's crazy is that if I were to pass, God forbid, if I was to pass, like my lineage is done. But I always held that always was something dear to me because of the fact that I really, really wanted kids. But I don't know why I felt like I really wanted to have a girl. And I had dreams about having a girl, and I told my wife, I was like, we're having a girl. And she was like, okay, cool, like fine. And at the gender reveal, when we pulled the what do you call those things, the rocket thing, and then the confetti came out, the blue confetti came out, I started crying because I was shocked. I actually stood there and I cried because I realized what that meant, and I realized how much I really wanted a boy. So yeah, I love my son, man. Yeah. My son is he's everything. There's a lot of days where he's the reason why I get up out of bed. Not to say I'm depressed or anything like that, but kids are amazing. Kids are God sent. They're heaven sent. They're a blessing. They're I can't even describe it. My son is really, if you ever meet him, he's the life of the party.
What's his name?
His name's Noah.
Noah.
Yeah, he's the life of the party. He is I can't even explain it, but he looks just like me. A lot of people say that he doesn't, but he does. But so I wrote my last book about those two individuals, my son and my friend, my late friend, and it's a personal project, but I shared it with the world, and I'm happy about it.
That was really interesting. Like, also, I don't know if you noticed, but you basically call all 5 of them your favorite books.
Yeah, they are.
So
they tell the story.
That's very nice, very nice. Speaking of your son, you mentioned you really, really wanted kids, but you haven't gone through that experience of not having parents and grieving and everything. Like, what made you want to have kids? Like, aren't you afraid that your son will have to go through that same experience?
No, I just feel like with the reason why I still want kids is because I know that kids are a blessing, and I'm somebody that I have a lot of love to offer, and I personally just don't want anyone, whether it's my kid or someone else's, to go through what I had to go through. Whereas you losing your parents and not having anyone to speak to, and basically filling a void with all these stupid things, vanity at the end of the day. So having kids was really more about instilling knowledge, instilling experiences into them, letting them know, hey, you don't have to go through this, or you don't have to do this to go through that, and just sharing. And I feel like that's a lot of the things that I wish my parents would have did with me, but I was too young. So it's more about giving back, I guess. That's me basically why I want to have kids, just to give back, and to share, and prepare. Because the world that we as we know it, it won't look the same in 20 years. So just to hopefully my son and any other children that I do have, that they get ready for it, that they won't be blindsided by it, and that they're prepared. Because I wasn't prepared when I lost my parents. I was actually thrown into the deep end. I was forced to swim with sharks, so I at least want to get him ready for life. And I feel like that's important as a parent, especially.
What's the? I'm sure there are a lot of amazing traits, but what would be the number one lesson that you would take from your parents that you're trying to instill that into Noah?
Feel. And what I mean by that is, don't be afraid to feel. Don't be afraid to cry in front of your kids.
Show emotions.
Yeah, don't be afraid to show emotions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Because I feel like especially in Haitian culture, we are actually taught I don't know if it's like that in your culture, but that we're not necessarily, it's frowned upon to ask questions to adults, as in kids are meant to be seen, not heard. That's always what we were told. So essentially, that's kind of like it's kind of like instilling the fear of God into somebody, but it kind of also disrupts the learning process, because when you do that to a child, that's what pushes them to rebel later. So essentially that's what it is. I probably just say, don't be afraid to feel, don't be afraid to ask questions, and just don't be afraid to talk.
Cool. Going back to poetry, just like the story you told me, how unfortunate kids were making fun of what you wrote to your love interest back then, your crush. I'm speaking from my own experience. Like whenever we learning poetry in what in my case French class, or even English later on, I've always felt that was the least favorite type of writing in language classes. First question, why do you think so? And two, what would be your tips to try to get people into this universe?
I think it has a lot to do with vulnerability. I think that there's one common misconception that people have about poetry, is that it always has to rhyme, and that it always has to rhyme, and a lot of people just get fed up, and they kind of get, I don't want to say writer's block, but it kind of turns them off when you think about, hey, I always have to rhyme to communicate something. But I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions about poetry. And I also think that the reason why it's so frowned upon, or not, people don't really take an interest into it in the school curriculums, is because it demands vulnerability. Because, yeah, you can definitely write about, hey, the cat in the hat sat on a rat and did all that stuff. You can do that. That's cute.
Did you just come out with that, or?
Yeah, I just did. But you can definitely do that. But a lot of the best poems talk about society. A lot of the best poems talk about heartbreak. A lot of the best poems talk about grievance and death and all these different things. And a lot of the best poets are the people that aren't afraid to show their emotions. And that's what poetry I feel that that's what it pushes you to do, is to be vulnerable. It's just to talk about things that are seen as taboo in our society. And a lot of people just I feel like a lot of people just go with the status quo. They just, they tend to, how could I say it? They tend to just not talk about the things that make them uncomfortable. And that's what poetry is. Poetry is an uncomfortable monologue.
That's an uncomfortable monologue. I like that.
That's what poetry is, and and I've seen that with experience. It's an uncomfortable monologue where the poet essentially is being vulnerable, being transparent, relaying something that is dear to them out into the world. So, yeah.
Okay, and what would your advice to try to get into it?
Go to an open mic. I would invite everyone to go to an open mic at least once, because you'd be surprised. It's not really what you think or what people think it is. Open mics are really where people just go to share poetry, but I feel like with open mics, it's kind of like watching someone paint with different colors, because with an open mic, you'll never hear the same poem twice. So you'll hear someone talk about racism. You hear someone talk about being depressed. Someone will talk about their finances. Someone will talk about their skin color, et cetera, et cetera. So you'll never get the same thing twice. And I just feel like there's something for everyone, but you just have to be open to it. So my best advice would either be to have people see poetry or go to an open mic. I have actually a friend that never went to one. She went to one recently because I invited her to one, and she loved it. She actually loved it.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's just me, but when I read poetry, a lot of times I'm like, I don't understand this line. Is it just me, or like, what's up with that? Like,
it depends. It depends on how, because a lot of people it depends on what kind of language they're using, what kind of terminology they're using. Are they using like everyday language? Are they using Old English? Are they using Ebonics? Are they using, the rhyming schemes? It depends on the schemes. It depends on the format. It depends on who the poet is. Because let's say Romel doesn't sound like James Baldwin. James Baldwin doesn't sound like Shakespeare. It's different experiences, different times, different vernacular. It all depends.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What would be your top recommendations for, like, you're a poem novice? Try these. Aside from open mic, is there like a specific book or whatever that you would recommend?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Like your go-to, like I'll give an example for manga. Like, for whenever it's someone who never watched those, I'm like, easy, Death Note, because that's the least
less complicated,
kawaii kind of thing. Like, that's my go-to. So is there a go-to for you for poetry?
I have. Oh man, you gave me a good question. To be honest, the one that really got me into it, like my go-to, that I told myself that, because I worked in a bookstore, and I worked at this bookstore, and I remember there was a small poetry section, and it really pissed me off because it was a really small poetry section. And I remember the book that really got my attention, and I hope that she hears this. It's actually Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. Milk and Honey changed my life as much as when I told you that Preston Perry, when he said what he said, because I remember during my shift at the bookstore, I took the book and I read it. And I read it in probably 2 or 3 sittings, 2 or 3 shifts. And what was funny was that I couldn't stop reading it. It was so good that once I was done reading it, I bought it and I read it again. And that's actually in my top 5, I'd probably say, of poetry books. Milk and Honey. So if ever anyone's looking to get into poetry and they are looking for somewhere to start, Milk and Honey is definitely the way to go.
Okay. Yeah. And what are your other top ones?
Ooh, that depends.
Depends on the mood?
No, it depends on the person. I have my favorite poets who have come out with some books. Rudy Francisco is one of them. He has this great poem. He has a few great poems. Actually, you can find them on YouTube. There's also Rudy Francisco actually has Helium, Excuse Me While I Kiss the Sky, and what's his second one? Oh, I forgot what the second one is. But all 3 of his books are great. What other poetry books I have?
Okay, I can rephrase it, I guess, maybe to help you. Like, are any of these like any books that we like? I get inspired by this. This is the style that I try to get inspired from.
That's another good question.
No one ever asked you this.
Well, not that way, but ooh.
I don't know how it works in poetry. Like, is there a style? Like, I guess yes.
There are. There are different styles for sure, but I guess I can't really answer that question. The reason why I can't answer it is because it's an ever evolving thing. Because just recently, when I was releasing my 5th book, I like to do research before I talk about a topic. There's actually I think she's a poet. I think she's Chinese, and I forgot her name. I think her name is Victoria Chang, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But she wrote a book. She's a poet, well-renowned poet, and she wrote a book called Obit, OBIT. And I had no idea what Obit was. And I found out what Obit was because I read Rudy Francisco's most recent book, Excuse Me While I Kiss the Sky. And the Obit is actually a form of poetry that it's kind of like an obituary. You talk about someone that passed. And I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that. I just thought it was poetry. So I studied the Obit style, and that's what helped me write that first half of my book for my friend. So I can't really say that there's a style that I kind of gravitate towards. As I mentioned before, I just love the art form so much. I try to explore. I never want any of my books to sound the same. Mm-hmm. That's why if you're familiar with, and this is why I mentioned him earlier, if you're familiar with Kendrick Lamar, all of his albums sound differently, but they kind of are linear in the storytelling. And that's what I always wanted my books to be like, where I'm telling a story in the grand scheme of things. Because all of my books, yes, they are about me, whether it's loosely or closely, but they also they tell a story about a certain phase or a certain where I'm at in my life at that point. So the Obit style, because we were talking about styles, was something that I learned. It was great to learn about, and I tried it in my most recent book. Yeah.
Can we get a tease of the next book?
Oh wow!
Assuming you're working on what?
I am.
You don't have to. I'm trying to get a scoop here.
I to be honest with you, I think about it every day. I can't formulate my thoughts about it yet.
Okay.
I have in my phone, I have a whole bunch of notes. I have poems ready, but I just don't know what direction I want to go with it. But I will tell you something. I'm actually working on a children's book as well.
Oh.
Yeah. I actually am working on a children's book, and the reason why I'm doing that is I want my son to be the main character. Representation matters. So I want my son to grow up knowing that he's a superhero in his own superhero. He's a character in a book. So
okay. Looking forward to that. I don't have kids, but I'll buy it for him one day. Okay, we're running low on time, so we're gonna switch to rapid fire questions.
Oh, okay. Let's go.
What's your ideal environment to read a poem?
Quiet, with music on, background music, preferably.
Okay.
Like ambiance music. I don't know if you're familiar with This Is Us, the show.
Yes, but I never watched it.
Okay. Or any show or anything. I learned to love background music or ambiance music, so I could play ambiance music, and then I just write. And that's my
write and read poems. That's your vibe you put yourself into.
Yeah, sometimes I'll be reading a poem, and I get inspired and I write, or I could just write anywhere. To be honest with you, it's in the kitchen, on my bed, playing with my son. Yeah,
never stop creating. Here's a fun one. Favorite anime?
Wow, I knew you were gonna ask me this. Of all time?
Yes.
Actually, it's an easy question. I'm going to tell you what I think is going to end up as the greatest anime of all time. And I'll tell you what my favorite is. I think that when it's all said and done, the greatest anime of all time will be One Piece.
Yes.
The reason why I say that the reason why I say One Piece is because nothing beats the story, the character development, the foreshadowing, all the literary the stuff that we learned in school, the literary elements, like foreshadowing, all these different things. Yeah. One Piece has all of that. And I think that that's going to finish as the greatest of all time. But my personal favorite of all time is Yu Yu Hakusho, always and forever.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are you watching right now? Oh, yeah, you said Blue Lock earlier.
Oh, I'm watching Blue Lock, Dan Dan Dan.
Okay, yo. Okay,
yeah.
you're up to date.
Yeah.
We're good. We're good.
Yeah.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Wow. That's a hard one right now.
Why am I just asking good questions to you?
Yeah. Favorite ice cream flavor? Bro, I switched up. I switched up. It used to be chocolate, and I'm a vanilla guy.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
It's funny. Like, I keep thinking that everyone's gonna say chocolate because I asked a couple of my guests this, but
Chocolate's undefeated. It's just that there's specific places where the vanilla ice cream is just magical.
Favorite video game?
Oh my! I knew you were gonna ask me this one too. Oh man. Of all time,
Yes.
can I go by console?
We're gonna be here all day. I just need one.
One. Oh my god.
Fine, I'll give you two. If you
Okay,
need.
two. Favorite video game of all time. All time. Oh my god. Oh my goodness.
Don't you have like a game you play since you were young? Like,
because that's the thing. It goes by eras, bro. Like I can tell you, just until recently, my favorite game of all time was Kung Fu Chaos on the original Xbox. It was kind of like the original Xbox's version of Mario Party. It was great. I loved it. But of all time, actually, okay, if I can go right now, to be honest with you, I would probably say.
Okay, fine. What's your favorite game in the last 10 years?
In the last 10 years.
Oh,
okay.
no.
In the last 10 years, I went to I'd probably have to say, and I feel like it's on the tip of my tongue.
Because you just entered this generation. You just got a PS5, so I don't think you have a favorite game yet.
Yo, this is harder than I thought it was gonna be. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna say it.
Okay.
Actually, I'm not gonna say it.
Don't want to create enemies.
Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna say a game, and I know I'm gonna take it back. But I'd probably say in the last 2 years, it'd probably have to be either I'd probably say Final Fantasy 16.
There you go.
Yeah, or Spider-Man 1.
Not 2?
I haven't played 2 yet. I've only played that one. I played 1 in Miles Morales. I haven't played 2 yet. Yeah, I know. I heard the 2 is amazing, bro. Don't do that. You're gonna make me do an impulsive.
Well, you have PS5 now, so you can play it.
Yeah, I'm gonna get it. That's my next buy.
Cool. Okay, I like those choices. Favorite food, or if you want a specific favorite Haitian food. I can tell you right. I love griot.
You love griot?
I fucking love griot.
I find griot to be overrated.
Really?
I don't eat griot, to be honest with you, because it's overrated. Because in Haitian culture, you understand that not everybody cleans pig the same way. So you have to be very.
Don't tell me that now.
You have to. I have to, because I care about you, bro. You have to be very intentional when you eat griot. And you can't eat it from just anywhere. But my favorite dish would have to be tasso cabrit, which is fried goat. Fried goat with rice and macaroni salad on the side, or beet salad on the side. I got you. Whenever you're free, I'll bring you.
Can we go now?
I actually have to go get my son.
So, God damn it, Noah.
So I'll bring you another day.
Okay, sure. It's fine. Okay, I think that's it for me here. Are you ready to be surprised yet again? I have more for you.
Don't tell me you bought my book.
No.
Okay.
I want to say better, but that's not true. So as a gift to every single guest in this inaugural season, I had them made a little gift.
Okay.
You guys made a little gift. I'll pass it to you, and you can turn it when you're ready, and let's see your reaction to it.
That is freaking amazing, bro. Wow. Bro, I'm hanging this up.
There you go.
This is awesome. If you guys don't, oh my God.
Do you notice the little book?
Yeah, I see it. That's what I noticed. I was like, wow, that is awesome. That is freaking awesome. Bro, oh man. I want to hug you, man.
After this.
Yo, this is beautiful. This is really, and the guy actually looks like me.
There you go.
Yo, oh my God, this is great.
This is by far one of my favorite part of doing all the guests. I see the reaction. I'm like, yeah, we nailed it.
This is dope. Did you do this by yourself, or you got
it? No. I didn't draw it myself. Obviously,
but it's still great.
Commissioned it. The background is from somebody different, and then the chibi is from another person. I'm not saying their name because they told me to wait until they're ready to rebrand and stuff. So I can tell you off air, but he doesn't want me to announce it yet.
Can we follow them on
Sorry?
Can I follow them on social media?
Yeah, sure. But again, he doesn't want. He's like, wait, I want to clean my
No
social media
worries.
already. So that's
This
why.
is
Yeah.
dope. Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I just gave him a couple of reference. I'm like, hey, could you put like his books there and stuff like that?
That is awesome.
Yeah.
No, I love it. Thank you.
Cool.
Oh wow, thank God. This is beautiful. Look at God. This is great. This is great. I'm hanging this up. This is awesome.
You're welcome. All right, before I close out the show, I'll let you do some plugs.
Yeah, I have I'm working on my new book. I don't know what it's called yet, so don't ask me.
But they can buy you 5 other books.
Yeah, you can find the 5 other ones on Amazon, of course. So Where Footsteps Lead Me, When Black Boys Cry, She Is, A War Between Two Lands, and Heading Home Soon, all on Amazon. And you can follow me on social media as well. Romel, Romel, last name Sylne, Sylne Jr. on Instagram. And
Cool. And that's it for the inaugural season of Tales to Tell. Thank you so much, everyone, for your support throughout this season. I hope that you enjoyed listening to this show as much as I enjoyed producing it. If you like this podcast and think we're worthy of another season, please consider following, subscribing to this show on your favorite podcast platforms, and sharing with friends and family. As always, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. The entire season is now available by the time you listen to this. And of course, if you have any feedback to help make the future shows better, please leave them in the comment section or reach out to us via social channels. Mainly, you can follow talestotell.podcast on Instagram to get updates and behind the scenes of the show. If you want to follow my personal adventures, find me at davidliu.17. We also have a Linktree /talestotell if you want to find all related links. As always, I hope you all stay safe and always be kind to each other. I'm your host, David Liu, and I will see you next time.